Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition it's Antarctic Adventure for the NES, brought to us by Konami. Now this game was originally developed for the MXX computer systems in Japan back in 1983, and was then later ported over to the NES. It features a penguin named Penta, who ended up becoming quite a popular mascot for Konami throughout the 80s, and eventually even landed him a series role in the Paradias series. In Antarctic Adventure, you control Penta as he races through several different courses, trying to get to the end before the time runs out. Like many early NES titles, this game does not have any end and will keep looping over. However, I will show each and every course in the game one time. Antarctic Adventure actually had a sequel developed also for the MXX, but was never brought over to the NES, called Penguin Adventure. That game was actually developed in part by Hideo Kojima, which is actually his very first project he ever worked on. So here we go with Antarctic Adventure for the NES. At the beginning you can select one of 3 different play modes, basically selecting the difficulty that you would like to start off with. We'll start off at the level 1 difficulty as we go through. As you can see, you play as Penta, as he's riding along trying to slide as fast as he possibly can to the goal. There's lots of deadly sea lions that want to try to get him and stop him, as well as you have other pitfalls that you have to deal with and jump over. There's jumping fish that will jump out of these holes along the ice that you can grab for extra points, as well as you can get a special item that I currently have, which gives you a propeller on your head which allows you to do a super jump. You can see at the top of the meter how much longer you have in each stage, represented by the rest counter that you can see as it counts down. You of course also have your score, the high score, how fast you're going, how much time you have left, and the current stage that you're on. As you can see at the end of the first stage, we end up completing and put up a flag for Australia. As you're sliding along as Penta, move back and forth and try to collect as many points as possible, which is really kind of the whole point of the game, as well as completing each stage. You have the different colored flags that give you points, and the flashing one is the one that allows you to have the propeller on your head. This will stay with you for the whole level until you use it. While nothing will actually kill Penta, it will slow him down every time you get hit by a sea lion or fall into one of the pits. The tracks get harder and harder and open up with lots of different pitfalls in a row sometimes that you'll have to learn how to jump over and maneuver. It's best to keep the propeller on your head for as long as possible until you get to an area where you may have 3 or 4 holes very close to one another. In stage number 3, we can see that the sky has actually changed color, and is one of the few differences that we can see in this level. You also saw in between each level you have a world map which shows you the path that you're taking along the next course, and how long that course may be. Some courses end up being rather long, and you even have some really short courses that we'll see later on. Here is one of the trickiest spots that we have to deal with so far, having 3 jumps really close to one another. You have to manage your speed rather well in order to try to do your best to dodge each of these holes, and when you have multiple holes together, it may be best to slow down as much as possible so that you can get a lot of quick jumps over and over again. You can see when Penta runs into something, he ends up getting knocked over and ends up stopping completely for a few seconds. Sometimes though, when you run into stuff, you can end up getting knocked back and knocked into other pitfalls that may be nearby. Here we have stage number 4, and once again it's during the daytime. There's a total of 10 different stages before they start to loop back around again as you make your way all around Antarctica and back to the very first starting point. Fans of the Gradius series may want to note that in the 2008 version of Gradius Rebirth that was put on the Virtual Console, you can actually see a brief screenshot from Antarctic Adventure in the introduction to the game. While the gameplay in Antarctic Adventure may be a little bit shallow, that it's not really mixed up too much and there isn't a whole lot of enemies or anything, it's still a pretty fun game considering it was released originally in '83 before getting ported over to the NES in '85-'86. In stage number 5, we're now about halfway through the game, as this is the halfway point of the island. You'll need to get your jumping and dodging skills pretty high at this point, as you're going to have some tricky jumps that you're going to have to make during this stage and the later ones to come. The only negative thing is at this point we've really seen all the game has to offer, so it's really coming down now to just mastering the controls and getting even better at the stages as we go through. Right there I had a great opportunity to use the propeller to help me over several holes at once, but then right afterwards I had a series of 4 holes that I had to try to get over. At the end of stage number 5, instead of raising one of the other country flags that we've seen, instead I'm raising a flag with Penta on it himself. I'm not exactly sure what this flag represents, but it's cute nonetheless. While this may have been Penta's first game that he appeared in, he's appeared in over 20 titles, most recently Apache Slot that was released in Japan, and most notably in the US, the new international track and field game that came out on the DS a few years back. At the end of stage number 6, we get to see the rising of the US flag as Penta has reached the research station for the US. Stage number 7 is another one where we have the orange sky overhead as we travel through. As you can see, there's a lot of sea lions that keep popping up trying to stop us, and we have a lot of those series where you'll have 3 or 4 different holes right back to back to back now. This can get rather tricky, but if you time your jumps, you can sometimes jump over 2 of the holes at once, so instead of jumping 4 times, you'll only have to jump twice. At the end of stage 7, we get to see the Argentina flag get raised overhead as we reach that research station, and we only have 3 more levels left to go. The hardest thing about the later levels is making sure that you can get to the station before the time ends up running out. so you're going to have pressure on yourself to keep your speed up at all times and master your jumping abilities. Upcoming here, we have some pretty tricky jumps where you'll have a big set of 6 different holes right in a row. So it's absolutely essential that you made sure that you grabbed yourself one of those propeller items so that you can just hold the propeller in and keep mashing the jump button so that you can jump over all those holes in a row. At the end of Stage 8, we raise another US flag, and it's time for Stage 9, which is easily the shortest level in the game. Stage number 9 is by far the absolute shortest level in the game. There's not too many tricky jumps, and it's really kind of just a nice little bonus level to build up some points before you make it to the final level of the game. At the end of Stage number 9, we raise ourselves the Union Jack from the research station, and we move on to the final level, Stage number 10. Stage 10 is the longest level in the game, as we'll have to go 1600 km in order to make it to the end. Grabbing ourselves a propeller early on will help us out because we will have a lot of tricky jumps. You only have a little over 100 seconds to make it through all this, so you're going to have some pressure in order to make it through. Unfortunately, by falling in one of the holes, I ended up losing my propeller. After a large turn, the path will then open back up, as this is about the halfway point of the stage. Try to do your best to move yourself in and out of some of the smaller holes that they like to bunch up together. Of course, while doing so, you want to try to jump up and grab as many fish as you possibly can as well. When you make it to this final turn, you're at the home stretch and you only have a little bit farther to go. After one last sea line, the path opens back up and we can safely reach the research station. Once we get there, we raise the flag of Japan, and we've completed all 10 stages of Antarctic Adventure. While Antarctic Adventure may not be the most exciting game, it is a little piece of gaming history, having a character that would go on to become a mascot, as well as being the first game in a series that would eventually have Hideo Kojima work on. And overall, for a lot of those arcade-style games that looped around early on in the NES, Antarctic Adventure is a pretty fun game considering. And with that, that's going to wrap up this edition of Play It Through. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.